Hey everyone, self-governance isn't a First Nations right, it's a human right. That's the thing. Why would anyone put forth the notion that certain subsect of society should have the authority to be self-governing while large and substantial portions of the rest of society or population are thrust into forced subjugation or authoritarian collectivism? I, for one, as a Canadian, demand that the governments in this country respect my sovereignty and my right to be a free human being as well. What's good for someone else is good for me. And if it's a moral, principled, or legal stance for some people, well, what makes them more exceptional or any different than I? Are we not all human? Do we not all bleed? Let's talk about equity or equality in terms of this. Since these authoritarian collectivists or so-called liberals suggest that they care about the sovereignty of the First Nations people, well then once again, what is exceptional about a First Nations person born today that was born the same year I was in 1970? What's exceptional about that person in comparison or contrast to me? Why do they have the right afforded or afforded to them to be sovereign individuals while I'm denied the very same thing? I have never chosen to be a serf, subject, or a slave to any ruling class or any so-called authority. So like I say, I, as a Canadian, demand my sovereignty as much and with every bit of resolve as these members of the First Nations community or the Aboriginal community of this country. Headline on the CBC News Politics: Ottawa signs self-government agreements with Métis Nation in Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. The landmark agreements could give Métis Nations control over social services and land. This being reported by John Paul Tasker, June 27, 2019. The federal Liberal government signed self-government agreements with the Métis Nation of Ontario, Métis Nation of Alberta, and Métis Nation Saskatchewan on Thursday, the first ever such agreements with Métis governments. After decades of legal wrangling and failed negotiations, these agreements are a major breakthrough for at least some Métis community who have long demanded that their indigenous rights, including hunting and fishing rights, and the right to occupy their traditional territories, be respected by Ottawa. It's a very exciting day, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett said. What we're signing today is a true acknowledgement of the Métis Nation and the relationship we will have going forward. Government to government. Once again, so why do these people have the ability to be sovereign governments all on their own, while the rest of us Canadians are treated like chattel, serfs, or second-class citizens in our own country? We're here to sign not one, not two, but 3 historic self-government agreements and to recognize that you, the Métis, have control over your own governance. The agreement gives the Métis jurisdictions in core governance areas, citizenship, leadership selection, and government operations. The agreements also hand these Métis nations the chance to develop their own laws and draft constitution to govern their communities. Once again, folks, like I say, freedom, if you're going to have any expansive aspects of what it is to be free in these goddamn nation states, then you have to expand that to everyone. Stop picking winners or losers or those who actually deemed to have some legal authority to self-governance and saying to the rest of Canadians that, nope, sorry, you're just a slave. You're just a tax serf. You're just a subject to the ruling class. No, I reject this two-tiered system in this country. I am a sovereign individual. I am not a slave, serf, or subject to any pretense of a ruling class or top-down authoritarian governing structure in this country. And I demand my recognition the same way these people did. Wow, I just want to say it's a great day. This is truly a historic day, said Audrey Petras, president of the Métis Nation of Alberta. It's not an exaggeration to say the agreements signed today are something we've been fighting for close to a century. Finally, Canada has recognized our right to self-government. Petras said Canadian colonization left the Métis as refugees in our homeland, as settlers stripped them of their traditional territories and left the original inhabitants in a jurisdictional wasteland. It was a shameful chapter in the country's history, she said. Many of the Métis Nation thought this day would never come, but today Canada has formally acknowledged what we've always known to be true. The Métis Nation in Alberta deserves self-government and we have a right to govern ourselves. So once again, I'll place a link to this article in the description of the video below. But once again, I demand my sovereignty to be respected as well. And if none of the federal parties wish to do so, then I want to ask them directly, what makes a Métis as an individual within this country, within this nation of Canada, what makes them any different from me or more deserving or worthy of having self-governance afforded or appointed to them? I ask that to not just the Liberals, but the Conservatives, the Green Party, the NDippers, the People's Party, the Libertarian. I ask anyone who represents a political party in this country to answer that question. And I'll be anxiously waiting and anticipating that answer, although I don't expect to ever get one, to be honest with you. But I'm going to point it out once again that I demand my sovereignty as an individual in this country. And if you're going to have any semblance of laws that's universally consistent or supposedly representing being equal in this country, well, that kind of equality doesn't happen unless all 36 or 37 million Canadians are afforded the same kind of sovereignty that's being afforded to these people. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.